I was always a chubby kid. I always remember being chubby. Elementary school, I was teased a little bit, not bullied, but like teased. Even going into high school, I had this friend and he was a soccer player and he was unbelievably ripped. Just abs,
Mm.
abs, abs, square, square. And I just said, what can I do? And he's like, just run. He's like, run. And I went with him once and I ran on the track and I took that advice. But the problem is with anything, you take one piece of advice and don't apply any other principles, it's just gonna go bad. I'd run 10 laps around my school track every day. And I'd come home exhausted, hungry, but I said, no, it's okay. And I would just go to bed. And I did that for a whole summer. And then I think it just got super tiny. I think I lost all of my muscle.
Today, I'm speaking with Savio. He grew up the chubby kid, avoiding pools, hiding behind crossed arms, and feeling the weight of insecurity long before he ever picked up a weight. Now, he's now in his 30s. He moved from Canada to live in Vietnam with his wife, but he's still chasing the same goal that's been with him for half of his life, to finally see his abs. But as he tries to diet down, self-doubt and conflicting advice and the temptation to just adjust something too soon keep creeping in. So we talk about how to stay objective, the hierarchy of training and nutrition priorities, and how to know when to push versus when to hold steady. I hope you enjoy this interview with Savio. You're Canadian, South Indian descent.
Yeah,
You and your wife a couple of years ago decided that you would pack up and move to Vietnam.
yeah,
You've been there for 2 years,
yeah.
and you're thinking of making a long-term go of it. So, yeah, how did you guys come to that decision?
Her background, she's Vietnamese. Her parents are Vietnamese. And
Wow.
when I was in Canada, I had studied Vietnamese. And it was after school. What I did was I had some volunteer work as well. And so with the
Mm,
Vietnamese community, I would teach the Bible in Vietnamese. And so that was my
mm.
volunteer
Wow.
work. And so I've always wanted to study it and learn it. And because I had that foundation, I've always had a desire of living abroad. Actually, my initial goal was to live in Japan because my English teacher, she instilled in, like, she's told us how when she graduated university, she took the JET program. And I
Right,
didn't even
yeah.
care about anything else. I didn't care about a degree. I just said, that's all I want to do. And I want to live abroad and it's going to be Japan. I'm going to teach English there. But I guess since I was studying Vietnamese, my wife always wanted to live in another country. She thought Thailand. And then we thought,
Mm,
let's try Vietnam. I was able to get a job, a teaching job here. And we didn't know how life would be. But when we got here, we realized how comfortable it could be for a foreigner. And
mm.
yeah, we fell in love with the people. They're amazing. They're unbelievably social. Any opportunity they can, they'll help you. So what became, okay, let's test it out for a year. It was like, okay, no, we can live here. This could be our life. Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm 20 years into Japan now. It took me a while before thinking, oh, instead of it being, yeah, I might go home next year, I might go home next year. It's just, no, this is life.
Look at that.
So,
No, it's big because you always have it in the back of your head. You're like, will I go back home next year? Yeah.
mm.
So that's cool.
When you commit, that's when things open up. That's when you can learn the language, etc. Like,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Give it your all.
What did you do? So you're 33, so it was 31 when you guys moved
Yeah.
over. What was it that you did up until that point back home in Canada?
So I did a lot of different jobs because
Mm,
at the time when I graduated, maybe
mm.
not so similar, but I didn't really want to pursue the career of my degree. My degree was
Yep.
GIS and it was mapping and planning and city planning. And I thought that kind of work, I had to do it full time. There's always a contract. Whereas if I could do any other job, I could do it part time and then still do my volunteer work. So I was looking for any job that
Mm.
can help me with my volunteer work. So at the time I'd work at Starbucks for a while and I did some odd office jobs. But funny enough, my favorite job was Starbucks out of all those jobs. Back in Canada.
Really?
Yeah, I like moving. I wanted to be on my feet. I wanted to interact with customers. That was just something I enjoyed.
Okay, so I see how you enjoy teaching English, foreign language there in
Yeah.
Vietnam. Fantastic. What was the first time that you decided that you would start hitting the gym? What motivated you? What was your physical position at that time? I just want to kind of get a little understanding of your background coming into this. Because right now I know that you're 171 centimeters, so this means you're a 5'7"?
5'7", exactly. Yeah, you're
Right. And
professional. You
you're
already know.
74 kilos. 74 kilos. So that means you are 151, 163 pounds ish. You're not underweight. Yeah. Well, how have you come to be in this position? What's your journey?
First of all, I appreciate you asking. I'll go through it as well. It started off with just high school. I took a personal. They have a weight training class. It was an alternative to a gym.
Cool.
Yeah. So instead of taking like a gym class when you're in grade 11 or 12, your last 2 years
Hmm.
of high school, there was a weight training. I said, hey, let's try it. Something different. And when I tried
Nice.
it, I remember going and I loved it. I loved working out. But I was like a typical, like, okay, I only want to work out like my arms and my chest stuff. Because in your head, you're like, oh, this is like the body parts that people see. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know when it happened, but it might have been a couple of months in. And I remember like some other students would be like, on days when you could wear regular clothes, they're like, wow, Savio, you're getting bigger. And that was such a nice feeling, not in a sense of like, oh, ego, but it was more like, that's kind of nice because I always grew up chubby. I was always a chubby kid. I always remember being chubby. Elementary school, I was chubby. I was a little teased a little bit, not bullied, but like teased. Even going into high school, I remember always being chubby, always. And I remember not being comfortable. I was never comfortable with my body. And I remember I never wanted to go to a swimming pool. 'Cause, like, I would always just kinda, like, cover up my chest because I always had extra fat on my chest. I would always be like this. I would go swimming lessons, and I'd be like this the whole time. And it's the worst. Imagine you're going swimming, and you're just like this for a good hour. And, I think knowing that you could do something to manipulate your body, it just stood out to me. So, I stuck to the gym from grade 11, grade 12, but I think my diet was still horrible. So as much as I got bigger, I was still, I guess, had a gut, still kind of big, and I just got so tired of it. And I had this friend, and he was a soccer player, and he was just. I think about it now. At 17 years old, he was unbelievably ripped, just abs,
Mm.
abs, abs, square, square. And I just said, "What can I do?" And he's like, "Just run." He's like, "Run." And I went with him once, and I ran on the track, and I took that advice. But the problem is with anything. You take one piece of advice and don't apply any other principles, it's just going to go bad. So what I did was I ran every day. So I'm pretty extreme. I ran every day after, I don't know why I thought, don't eat after 7. So I stopped eating after 7 and I just ran. And I'd run 10 laps around my like school track every day. And I'd come home exhausted, hungry, but I said, no, it's okay. And I would just go to bed. And I did that for a whole summer. And then I think it just got super tiny. I think I lost all of
Mm.
my muscle. I was very, very, very,
Mm.
very skinny. Even like people were like, "Hey, you're like a little too skinny." But in my head, I
Mm.
didn't take it as like a sign of like warning. I just thought, no, I need that way. But the funny thing
Yeah.
is, if you just try to get skinny and don't build muscle, you look skinny fat. And so I still had the little belly, but just tiny twigs for arms and legs, and then still a belly. And then I
Mm.
thought, like, what am I doing? And then university came, worked out again, and just the diet. I never realized the diet was one of the biggest parts. So throughout university, I'd work out, I'd do everything, but then in university, you got parties, so you're drinking, you're eating. So I felt like I wasn't the super skinny guy again, but I was always here. I was always like oh yeah, I got a little bit of muscle, but it's always covered in fat. And so always
Middle of
had
the
it.
road.
Exactly. And I because I still have that, I always felt like I have extra fat on my chest and I still had the insecurities. It only recently, I would say I was comfortable going to a beach, taking off my shirt. But to this day, I remember that's the only reason why I said I never liked swimming. I think it's just because as a child, I hated taking off my shirt. Just hated it. Yeah.
Interesting you said that. I used to swim competitively because my mum told me and I was from 6 to 11. And then I stopped swimming, but I ate the same. I used to swim like a lot. Like I was in the pool, I think 2 hours a day.
Oh, you're burning so many
Um,
calories.
yeah, yeah. And, I was young. You're not paying any attention to your diet,
Yeah.
right? As you shouldn't be,
Yeah.
really. And then over the next couple of years, my body changed. And I didn't like it. And I felt very self-conscious. And I remember being on holiday when I was I think I was 13 years old. And I wouldn't go in the pool without taking my shirt. I went in the pool with a t-shirt on.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable taking off,
Yeah.
weirdly. And I know that people listening to this, this might seem like a strange thing for me to say, but I'm not, I'm not that friend of yours who you s- turned to for advice who told you, dude, just run.
Yeah.
Right? What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm not that genetically blessed guy.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting point. You look to someone who looked like you wanted to, you asked them what they did, and then you did what they did and expected that you would get the same result,
Yeah.
not realizing that genetics are a massive component of this. And so that guy, if he had actually gone and lifted, he would have probably just been an absolute monster, like just blown up. But the fact is, his genetics as they were, just from running, like he just got shredded off. He already had a fairly muscular base and he just got shredded. But that just didn't work for you.
No.
So you ended up losing your muscle that you built in your upper body. I imagine you hung on to a bit of leg muscle given that you're running like middle-ish distance, just 10 laps of a 400-meter. So that's 4K, that's 2.5 miles. So you're probably throwing in some sprints there. So you maintained your leg muscle. Not that you care about that, right? All guys, they care about their chest, shoulders, back, arms, right?
Yeah.
Which can be contracted to chest and arms. And so you've then lost that muscle, unfortunately. However, you're primed to gain it back because muscle, once lost, is way easier to regain than that first period where you're gaining. So you gain it back, but you're at college. I assume there's some drinking or food or whatever it is. Your diet's not the cleanest.
Yeah.
You gain back muscle. You also gain some fat. And then since then, for many years up until, 2.5 years ago, you were sort of middle of the road. Now, what changed then and what have you done since? How has your weight changed? How has your definition changed? Yeah.
My wife suggested calorie counting, and the first time she said it honestly sounded like taboo. And the second I heard
Mm.
like you have to put numbers into an app to dictate what you eat, it sounded like the most unnatural thing to me. And
Right.
I don't know. I'm always resistant initially to when she suggests something, even though it's the best advice for me.
Mm.
So I don't know what changed, but I think because I had more time here in Vietnam, I said, let me just try. So I downloaded an app, didn't matter which app. And I said, I looked for maintenance. I would go on YouTube. What does it mean? Maintenance calories. And let me go a little bit under. And I just tracked. I just tracked. And then I even put like every day, I put like my weight on a little just notes. And
Mm.
having that number actually helped me a lot. And it wasn't an extreme number. It wasn't like, oh, I was significantly under eating, maybe at times. I just had less. And just having a number I would have for each meal, it would help me because I think my body would be so confused as to, am I full actually? Or am I still hungry? You know, because I've
Mm.
had days or I've had sessions in my life where, like when I said when I was running, I was severely under eating. And but I
Yep.
told myself I wasn't hungry. So I think at that time my stomach was just confused. It's like, maybe are you still hungry? Are you not? So having that tracking really helped me. I did notice I'd lose weight. Then my wife suggested another thing. She said, you could take photos. And that seemed even weirder to me. That, oh man, photos of myself without a shirt, that just for me, like I don't know. Oh, like this is so I took one and I felt awkward. And then I did one a month later and I looked at 3 months and I looked the same. My arms looked the same and the stomach looked the same. And I thought, the
Mm.
scale shows I'm going down. And I would see that number and I'd be so happy. But then I looked, it's like I just had skinny arms, skinny legs, and a little bit of a gut, and it never changed. And the definition
Mm.
never changed. The only time it started to change was honestly, I think when I read that article at Rip Body, when it talked about macros and it talked about cutting. I think it also there was like little gems in your book, maybe in terms of like how much macros I should have, things to kind of look out for, what to watch out. And so I just kind of applied that. And I think I also used your article to remind myself, you do not need to, should you decrease calories? You have a little chart and it's like, yes or no, yes or no. Sorry, I can't refer from my, but I remember that. And I thought, wow, I think that every time I have to decrease calorie, decrease. And it's like, should you decrease calories? Well, have you like checked your weight for like certain amount of weeks? Is it just 1 week? And then I would say, no, actually, it's only been 1 week where it stayed the same. So I just listened to your article and it helped. And that's what really I feel helped me to not be extreme is reading the suggestions in your article. And so I would lose some weight I wouldn't go extreme with the calories in terms of like going down. And yeah, I noticed a little bit of a definition change. But I think for right now where I'm at, one thing that I always struggle with is after a month, I always think, did I change? I always go back to, should I change my calories, or is there something I need? Should I change my workout routine? I don't know why. I always think that.
Savio, I'm telling you, man, like half of our job as coaches is to just force people to switch off their monkey brain
Yes.
or to not follow their monkey brain. It's just like, I need to adjust. I need to adjust. Things are going too well right now.
Yeah.
Right? I must change something.
Yeah.
It's like, no. For anyone wondering the article you're referring to, if you go to ripbody.com/nutrition, that's got a list of all of the nutrition articles, and you're looking for the one, it's number 6, which is how to adjust calories and macros as you diet. I would say I'm going to link to it in the podcast notes, but I'm just going to forget. So I'm not going to promise that. But if you go to ripbody.com/how to adjust macros, all with hyphens, then you'll find that. Now, that's got the flowchart in that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm glad, like,
Life-changing.
because it gave you a system for looking at things and then adjusting based on the data rather than your emotions. And the problem with our emotions is that motivation controls a lot of them.
Yeah.
Also, our hunger and fullness cues. Sometimes our motivation can be so high that we can ignore our hunger and fullness cues, like you were able to because you believed so much in the system that your friend told you, just run, right? That you were able to ignore your hunger. And maybe even there is truth to the fact that you didn't really feel it that much, again, because you're so motivated. However, life is going to come along and kick us in the ass at certain times. And if we're going to change everything that we're doing based on how our motivation is fluctuating rather than the data that we have, it's setting us up for, unfortunately, failure. Now, what does failure mean? Usually means a regression to where our habit baseline is. And many people, unfortunately, they have some kind of life event smack them before they've managed to permanently shift their habit baseline, so that they're pulled towards, almost like gravity, towards the physique that they wish to go to. Instead, they're now being pulled towards, their habits are pulling them like gravity towards the body that they had before. And so it sounds to me like you don't have that problem now, that you are being more, how do I say, objective. You're able to be more objective with your decision making. However, it does seem to me you've used a few words in here, make it seem like you're not quite being consistent with it. This monkey brain is kind of coming out and making you want to adjust things. Can you first tell me, are you tracking your weight, your measurements, your sleep, stress, hunger, fatigue, all of the things that I say? If you go to ripbody.com/tracker, you'll see the progress tracker that we use with clients there. Are you logging everything that we have there or not? What's the extent to which you're doing this?
A good question. So I'm tracking my calories and I'm tracking my protein. My carbs,
Yep.
I'm trying to reach it. And here we are. When I did my macro tracker, I did it based off like just a random website. And so I have done that. In terms of measurements, I haven't done where I'm actually using like a measuring tape. That might be purely out of laziness, honestly. But I do
I understand.
the weight tracking on a scale every morning without fail. I think every month I try to do a photo just as an update, just to kind of give myself, okay, where am I at physically? Is it going down? Like, is there some sort of definition? One thing that I want to mention, I don't know if anyone else deals with this, but sometimes when I see some advice, like even actually some of the recommendations you've made, I always have this doubt in the back of my head. So for example, I notice with a lot of your clients too, you encourage protein, and I totally agree with it. But sometimes in my head, I think maybe I don't need that much protein to get that progress. So for example, I'm only doing I'm like 100 to 120 grams of protein per day. In my head, I think, oh, maybe that will be enough. And maybe some days I don't hit the 170 grams of carbs. Usually the fats stay at 70. But sometimes, I don't know why, but the moment I notice, like in my tracker, if I'm lower on carbs, I'm like weak that day. And I thought,
Okay.
wow.
All right. Great. Okay. This is a fantastic point. So, could you please, I'm going to put a mental pin in photos and measurements,
Okay.
and maybe a mistake there. So photos and measurements, let's remember that. Now, is 120 grams of protein enough? Okay, so there are two important things here, all right? First is an order of importance for training nutrition. The second is what the research actually shows. So when we're looking at research, we're pulling out recommendations which are based on the averages of what found. But when you look at the individual data, you find it's more of a scatter plot rather than a clear curve with diminishing returns to protein intake. So some people, despite their body size, they will get away with, so to speak, lower protein intakes than others who will need higher protein intakes for the same results. And so we can't say that you need more or less. You just have to try it and see. And unfortunately, it's not something that you're ever really going to be able to tease out because there are so many other things that are going on. Your training, your calories overall, like all of these other things that are going on. So for you at 75-ish kilos, who could probably lose maybe 8 kilos and then be shredded lean, that was then going to put you at 68 and multiply that up. So I shouldn't ever do public math. 135 pounds. And again, shredded lean. At your current muscle mass level, I should say. I say that because people get a little bit scared whenever I throw out a low weight number, right? They're like, oh, I can't possibly do that, right? Then we're looking at, okay, well, maybe then your protein at 1 gram per pound of body weight at that level, that would be 135 grams. Is a difference of 15 grams from 120, which you're currently getting, to 135 going to make a meaningful difference? I don't know. It's questionable because, and this gets on to the second point, what is most important in the priority of importance? Okay. Number one is training quality. Number two is calorie intake, specifically the rate of weight change that we shoot for. So we know that when we can lose fat faster than we can gain muscle. And so we know that our bulking phases should be slower than our fat loss phases. But also, there's a limit to how much fat we can lose in any given day. So when we start going too fast with our weight loss, we end up losing muscle. So when we look at these, and then after that, it's protein intake, but this is a distant third. So then when we look at these things, really, is your training performance kept? Is your training good? Has it been optimized? This really is question one, because if you do that, all of your results everywhere are just going to be better. But then you said an interesting thing, and this is assuming that your training program is optimized and you're putting your all into it. You said that when you try to go higher with protein, you end up having to sacrifice some carbs, which is natural, right? We've got to rob Peter to pay Paul. Sorry, Peter. And then you're finding that your training intensity goes down. And so when we look at this hierarchy of importance, training quality is top dog, then calorie intake, then protein and the specific macros. Well, then it becomes clear to us that actually that is a trade-off that you should be making, that 120 grams for you in your current sustainable dietary setup is best because that allows you to have more carbohydrate, which fuels your training. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, especially if we go with that formula that training is number one importance. Yeah. That's clear.
Yeah, let's think about it another way. If you were to pay no attention to your diet, but train really hard and gain weight slowly over time, this is scenario A. Or you do not train at all, but you increase your protein intake. That's scenario B. Which one of those is going to lead to muscle gain?
I think number one scenario A.
Yeah, it's not even. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number one. Without the training stimulus, we're not going to be growing that muscle. And it's also in the reverse when we're dieting. Without that training stimulus, we're not going to hold on to the muscle. It just pales in comparison, the significance of it. And so I hope that helps ease your mind. I know that one of the things that you've said here is I have so many pieces of information, but doubt creeps up in my mind. And that's understandable, because another highlight I've got here from your application, you said, I've started taking my health and nutrition seriously since I landed in Vietnam. I believe I watched or listened to at least one health or nutrition video or article every day for about a year.
Yeah.
And I admire your dedication. Of course, the problem with that is too much conflicting information,
Oh, yeah.
potentially.
Oh,
right?
my goodness. It's like every day I'm trying a new diet, or every day I'm like, oh, I guess I'm doing that wrong. So let's do something new. Oh,
It doesn't matter if it's my information or someone else's, as long as they're not a charlatan. But it can almost be best to just stick with like one person's one kind of system and then ignore the rest while you're doing it.
yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to, I don't know, it would be like trying to learn boxing from a Muay Thai teacher and a more traditional Western boxing teacher at the same time. All your stances and all the things are going to be messed up. But if you just choose the one, the end result is that it is going to be effective at self-defense for you.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was even thinking, like, just being an English teacher. Imagine learning English from someone from Birmingham, England, or Melbourne, Australia, or even someone from New Zealand. Everyone has a different accent. And so if you're trying to follow one accent with 3 different teachers, you'll go crazy. That advice makes complete sense.
So at this point, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Is it lean out? Is it bulk up? What's your goal? What are you currently chasing?
It is the goal I've had since I was a kid, honestly. And it sounds like a vanity goal, but it really isn't. It's purely for personal. I want to get to a lean enough point in my life where I can have abs. I know, like, the fat on my chest will always kind of be there. Just, I'm assuming I have the gynecomastia. I don't know the phrase, but I know if I'm at a low enough body fat percentage, it will get to a degree where it's okay. But if I can have a moment where I can say, wow, I can actually see my abs and try to just maintain that, that would be a lifetime goal, actually. Just, yeah.
So you're 33. I know you mentioned you were inspired by Tariq. He was 36 at the time, and he's since come back to coaching. He's now 40 or 41. But if you go on, the result that you see on the website is Tariq, 36. He's 19 pounds of fat down. I believe he's the same height as you. And if I recall correctly, his ending weight was around 135. But what you'll notice there is,
Wow.
yeah, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But he looks incredible, right? He kept going. And obviously he's flexing and the lighting is good there, but he kept going. And we've bulked up since then. We've done that a few times. The lighting, like he just looks bigger. There comes a point just before the definition comes through where everybody just stacks it. I'm not sure what's the correct term there. People, they bail because they get nervous because they start to feel skinny.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the point just before that definition comes through. And then from that point, you look bigger. Sure, not in the same t-shirt and clothes, but with your shirt off, oh my goodness, right? So I would just say to you, know that that's coming, embrace it, and keep pushing. And you might not have as much muscle mass as Tariq, but the same principle like applies. Let's say you have to get down to 130. It's okay. You can then bulk up afterwards. Remember, it's a lifelong goal that you've had. You'll have checked that box. It's going to give you confidence that you can do it again, so that when you bulk up afterwards, over a maybe, 8-10 months, you gain around 20 pounds in total, and you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because you're feeling a little bit fluffy. Then you're like, okay, it's not a problem. I've been lean before. I know I can get there again, but this time I'm going to be even more muscled. Hell yeah, right? It's going to give you that confidence that you can do it, which is going to really help your subsequent bulking phase. So, yeah.
No, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's something I need to hear.
Now, just to pick up that pin that I put into our mental board here, that you rudely did not remind me
I
about,
apologize.
Savio. It was about the photos, and I wanted to mention about the measurements. So you were looking at the photos and you were losing weight, but you weren't able to see the changes. So this is a mistake that a lot of people make, that they have the right intentions, photos, and your wife's advice there was good. But the problem is that we can't always see the differences in photos, but if you'd had body measurements, you would have been able to see the changes. And the numbers staring you in the face mean that you can't get the, how can I say, the mental cloudiness, the lack of this subjectivity that we have when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror or just photos of ourselves. We have this objective measure of what has actually changed. And so what you're going to find is that your arms, they may be the same size as you lean out. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you pinch on your arms now, you can see that there's some fat there, right? So what that means is that you've actually grown muscle there. Happy days. You're going to see that your chest and your back actually reduces as well a little bit. But if you reach under, right now, if you reach under and pinch the skin just there, well, you've got some fat there, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to go down. Doesn't mean muscle loss. That's okay. Happy days. You're going to notice that your stomach measurements, you're going to do the upper, the mid, the lower, and then around the waist. These are all going to reduce, but toward the end, it's just going to be mainly that 3 finger widths below the navel and the waist that is going down. Why is that? Because now we've removed, generally fat loss comes from the top down, and we've removed everything except for the stuff on the sides and our lower back that we don't really typically think of, right? Because we're mostly just staring at our abs. But you will see that that continues to come down. Again, you've got the measurements there. It's going to really help you stay objective and stay motivated. And then also know when an adjustment is actually needed. So it'll make sense.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned about the fat on your chest. And that was something that you were concerned about. So I had that as well. This is why I wouldn't go in the pool. That, and like I wasn't as, like I was lean, like I was lean when I was a kid, and I no longer had that. And I had these moobs, like man boobs.
Yeah.
That this is not something that I think anyone else would really notice. But I just thought I had these horrible, like puffy nipples. And again, I feel silly saying this, but I know that this is not something I've ever put to words before, but or written about. But I know there are going to be, I know you're nodding along, and there's going to be others listening who are nodding along and they get it, right? If you lean out, that's just going to go. So it's just going to go because it will lean out from all places. Now, I haven't seen you with your shirt off, so I know that like medically there may be some exceptions. But I've yet to have a client come to me who has, and I'm only talking about a handful, somewhere between 5 and 10 have mentioned this specifically over the last 14 years. But none of them have ever failed to lean out that part of their chest, and they've just been super happy afterwards. It was just a case of leaning out a little bit more, and that's just for them. Either they felt they have an issue, but kind of in my opinion, they didn't really have an issue. Like we tend to be pickier about ourselves than anyone else. Or they just tended to hold a little more fat in their chest than the average person. But it was, again, nothing that just leaning out globally didn't, quote unquote, fix. So, yeah.
That was reassuring. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess when you don't have someone to kind of remind you of that, it is hard. And I agree. This is probably the first time I've actually maybe specifically talked about the minor issues that I've always repeated in my head. So yeah, no, that's great advice.
So what doubts do you still have in your mind now that we may be able to clear up?
Honestly, you ask the best questions. Every time I'm like, oh, but what about? And then you're like, you asked me a question, and I thought, hey, there we go. So thank you, Andy. I appreciate this. This is awesome. At this point, the one last doubt I do have is you mentioned optimizing your workout routine. And there's so many routines. And I actually even remember reading one of your routines. You give an Excel file, one for beginners, one for intermediate, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm at a point where I work out every day. 5 days a week for an hour. And I've done different routines, but now I've kind of done I call this the Savio fun routine. The Mondays and Fridays I do chest and back because I heard or read we should work our body parts at least twice a week. So I do Monday, Friday, chest and back, and I do Tuesday, Thursday, I do like shoulders and arms. And then Wednesday I do legs. And at the end of every workout, I try to do 5 minutes of abs. So maybe like with the cable crunch, I'll do some ab work, leg raises. So that's how I'll finish it off. But for me, I always think to myself, am I really optimizing my workout routine by doing it that way? Should I follow the routine that perhaps you have laid out or others have laid out, push pull legs? And that's my last thought because I'm putting in the effort. I know I'm there for an hour. My watch tells me I'm burning calories. So, okay, something's happening. But am I really doing it the right way? Am I being smart with like, my joints? Am I, not, if I'm working out wrong at all, I would feel it too. Like, so that's my last doubt, honestly.
If you're working out wrong, so if you are, let's unpack that. If you're pushing too hard or you're using poor form, pushing too hard or doing too much or using poor form, we can get joint pains, right? We all know that. We've all done that. We've all grabbed a program we probably shouldn't be doing and got a little bit too enthusiastic a little bit too quickly, and that's ended up in tears, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
There's like, shit, my elbow hurts. Shit, it's not going away for like 6 weeks. Damn it, right? Right, we've all had that. So we're no longer making those mistakes. I think the people who are brand new, they're not really listening to this podcast, and that's cool. Now, you're putting me in a tricky position. You're asking me basically to critique your program. What I think is great about this is that you're enjoying it. And this is number one, because enjoyment leads to effort and consistency, and consistent effort leads to results. And so if you're seeing results, there's absolutely no need to change anything. Full stop.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, if you say to me, what would I change? If you were to go to ripbody.com/programs, it's going to give you that spreadsheet. And then if you click on it's either the top or bottom, we've got a series of tabs, and you'll find the intermediate bodybuilding program. That's a 5-day routine. And you'll see there that we've got it as a lower body, upper body, lower body, push, pull. Now, currently you have upper body, lower body, upper body, upper body. So you can see that there's a bit of an imbalance.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say to you is that it was chest and back. So that's a push-pull on your Monday. You're also doing a horizontal push-pull on your Fridays. And then your Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're doing a vertical push, which is your shoulders. It doesn't sound like there's a vertical pull, but you probably do have a vertical pull on your back day on the Monday and Friday, I guess. Like a lat pull down or something like that, or a chin up.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. And then you've got your arms. Your arms are already being trained on the Monday and the Friday anyway. And it's not to say that there isn't any place for direct work, but it's probably a little overkill right now.
Yeah.
And so if you continue that, you may find that your elbows maybe get a little bit cranky or your shoulders get a little bit cranky. Because the other thing to remember is with your bench press or machine horizontal press or dumbbell chest press, whatever it is you're doing, your flies, you're working out your shoulders a little there as well.
Yeah.
So then when you're going into a shoulder day straight after, or you're going into another chest day on the Friday after your shoulder day on the Thursday, it's a lot. So your joints may get cranky there, and that would be my concern. And then another concern is that you may just be under training your lower body.
Yeah.
And this is something that people often neglect, but this is what makes us strong and powerful and agile and athletic. These are all words that some listeners, they'll be like, oh, I remember those days where I could use those words to describe myself. But the thing that I'd say to you is at 33, right, you want to be putting this athleticism in the bank as much as possible, because it doesn't get any easier from here. Once you get to a certain age, really it is just a case of, okay, how long can I maintain this for into my old age? Mm-hmm. So I know you're only training legs once a week. I don't think you have any other cardio hobbies, right?
I just do the 10-minute, I'll do the 10,000 steps a day. I have a little walking pad at home. So that's something that I try to do.
So there's no excuse, basically. There's no like, oh, well, I'm worried about the interference effect with my running or my cycling or something like that. There's not, you don't have that. So I would say I would consider doing the lower body as well. So I would take the intermediate bodybuilding template, again, ripbody.com/programs. and I would have a look at what it is you're doing, have a look at the format that we currently have, keep the format that I've suggested there, but swap out, use those drop downs and swap that out for the exercises that you love and enjoy.
Definitely.
And try that and see how you feel. And for the first 4 weeks, I would do one set. Actually, the first 3 weeks, I would do one set fewer than recommended for all of those exercises. This is just to help make sure that you aren't suddenly ramping up volume in places that you hadn't really been training optimally before, and then your joints again start to get cranky.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. No, 100%. It's I think there's something even I remember reading. He said progression. I think you wrote it, and you wrote about how progression overload is good, but maybe you think I have to progress every week, but maybe just that week. I don't know if you said psychologically you just can't do it. Then don't push yourself. And actually,
Yeah.
I tell myself that, like, okay, progressive overload. And let's say that Monday I did chest and I did this weight. And then Friday I say, oh, I should go higher. But maybe like physiologically, I just can't. So just wait until a week later. And that's a little piece of advice that I remember reading off one of your articles. And I thought, this is very practical. Yeah, because sometimes you tell yourself you just have to progress, but then if your body and I don't know, physiologically can't do it, then you shouldn't force yourself.
Yeah, so we do want to progress if we can, but if we can is key. We tend to forget that. We got our training plan and we just go into the gym. We're like, right, I'm going to beat that this time. And some days your body's just not going to allow it. And then some days, and frankly, we do not progress on a linear schedule like that, where we're just going to be able to keep on nudging up the weight. The arbitrary weight plates that we have access to in these 2.5 pound increments, right? We're not just going to consistently be able to improve like that every time. So the thing that we have to bear in mind is that, progress can still be an increase. Let's say you're doing 4 sets of an exercise. If you can get 1 rep more for those sets, or even for just one of those sets,
Yeah.
if you can have that feel lighter, that's progress. The other thing that kind of complicates things is that strength fluctuates. Some days we're going to feel more energized than others, and this can just be some random thing that we don't really have any rhyme or reason for, but it just happens to us. Some days it's obvious it's because we didn't sleep well the night before, or for 2 nights in a row, or work's kicking our ass or something, whatever, right? We've got other stuff on our mind. And on those occasions, we've got to remember to be kind to ourselves. And that's why we have the RPE guidelines or reps in reserve guidelines with the programs. So, we might say there, hey, keep it so that you've got an RPE of 8 or reps in reserve of 2. And so that means your first set, you're not going to failure on that first set. You're keeping 2 reps in the tank more that you could have done, so that then you have the capacity to still be able to do the rest of your sets with the same load. And what that means is, if after warming up, something feels a bit off, well, the load that you should be lifting that day, arguably, is a lighter load than you normally would. And so it starts with making that mature decision once you've warmed up that something feels off and you just lighten things slightly. And that just allows you to win the battle that day so that you can win the war, right? Yeah.
I like that. That's awesome.
Savio, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing. I think people will take some good things away from this one.
No, Andy, I appreciated all your advice, and your questions were just spot on. It was very practical and very helpful and very balanced. So I appreciate it a lot.
Keep going, man. I'm excited to see how you do from here.
Yeah.
Please do update me.
No, definitely. Yeah, most definitely I will. Yeah.
I'll click.
Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to click that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, or someone happened to share this with you, or you stumbled across it on your podcast app and you're not already subscribed. Really appreciate it. And if you could leave us an honest review, that would be most appreciated as well, and will help other people discover the show. Now, if you're looking for further help, you can go to the website. That's ripbody.com. Of course, you can read the articles, and I answer the comments on those articles every day, and I have done for 14 years. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper, we have our Rip Body
Kickstart Guide. This is a 15-day free course where you get our training programs, you get the nutrition setup guide, and you get my email course on how to avoid the most common training and nutrition mistakes that people make. It's better than most people's paid content, and it's all free. We have some books available for sale. We've got the Muscle and Strength Pyramids, and we have the Diet Adjustments Manual. And finally, if coaching interests you, this is what we absolutely love. We would love to hear from you. Just click the coaching button on the website or go to rippboy.com/coaching. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing how we can help. All right. Thank you. Until next time.